The chandeliers cast a golden glow across Sapphire Hall's grand ballroom, transforming Dallas's elite into glittering constellations of wealth and power. Crystal glasses clinked like wind chimes, laughter bubbled across the room, and the jazz quartet's smooth melody floated above it all. The event program declared it a charity gala for underprivileged children, but to Jack Wilson, watching from the service corridor, it looked more like a competition of who could flaunt their wealth most convincingly while claiming to care. Jack adjusted his Navy maintenance uniform, the fabric worn thin at the elbows. At 32, his face carried more lines than it should, eyes that had seen too much tucked behind a carefully neutral expression he'd perfected over 3 years at Sapphire Hall. The cleaning cart beside him contained everything he needed for tonight's shift, once the wealthy patrons cleared out and left their mess behind. The service door swung open as Carlos Mendez backed through, balancing 3 empty trays. The head chef's white coat bore evidence of the kitchen's chaos. "Not your usual crowd tonight, huh?" Carlos nodded toward the ballroom, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "Big names, big money, big headaches. Added 50 more guests at the last minute. The kitchen's going crazy." Jack's eyes scanned the room, automatically assessing future cleanup zones. "Nathan Reed's here, CEO of Visionary Tech, worth a couple billion at least." Carlos wiped his brow with his sleeve. "Yeah, and he tips like he's worth about $10. Head home early if you can. Your boy's probably waiting." A simple nod was all Jack offered in response. He'd learned to measure his words in this place, where staff were expected to be efficient shadows, not people with voices. The crowd parted briefly, revealing Nathan Reed holding court in the center of the room. At 42, he had the confident posture of a man who expected the world to bend to his will. His tailored suit probably cost more than Jack's annual salary. Beside him stood his wife, Sophia, her golden hair elegantly styled, her turquoise silk dress concealing her 6-month pregnancy. Her smile never reached her eyes. Jack had seen enough wealthy couples to recognize the signs: her slightly hunched shoulders, the way she flinched when Nathan raised his hand to emphasize a point, how her gaze constantly sought his approval. He'd witnessed this dance before, but tonight something felt different, more volatile. The crowd shifted again, blocking his view. Jack stepped back into the shadows, waiting for his shift to properly begin. He wasn't paid to watch the show, just to clean up after it. The first discordant note pierced the carefully orchestrated evening at precisely 9:47 p.m. A glass tipped over, a cold laugh cut through the music. Then came a sound that didn't belong, sharp and unmistakable. A slap. The music continued, but a ripple of silence spread from the center of the room. Jack moved forward instinctively, pushing his cart aside. Through gaps between black ties and evening gowns, he saw Sophia Reed on the marble floor, one hand protectively cradling her pregnant belly, the other touching her lip where blood had started to form. Nathan stood over her, his face flushed with anger, not embarrassment. Guests looked away, suddenly fascinated by their champagne or the ceiling's architectural details. Security personnel hesitated near the walls, unwilling to intervene with the event's top donor. Jack felt his heart hammering against his ribs. His hands trembled slightly as voices from his past echoed in his head. His late wife, Mary. "Promise me you'll look after Ethan. Teach him to be good." His son's kindergarten teacher last week. "He drew this picture of you. He says his daddy is his hero." His feet moved before his brain had fully processed the decision. "Sir, please stop." Jack's voice wavered but carried across the sudden vacuum of sound. "She's pregnant. Please don't do this." Nathan turned, his expression morphing from rage to incredulous amusement. "Who the hell are you? I work here, sir. But she needs help. She's hurt." Nathan stepped closer, cologne and whiskey mingling on his breath. "You think you're doing something brave right now? Do you know who I am?" Jack swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Yes, sir, but that doesn't give you the right to hit her." The room seemed to collectively hold its breath. Nathan's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "You think anyone will believe a janitor like you?" Jack's heart thundered in his chest, but something kept him rooted in place. The image of his son's face, the crayon drawing pinned to their refrigerator. "Dad is my hero. Maybe no one will believe me, sir." Jack reached slowly for his phone. "But I still can't just stand here." Nathan's hand moved in a blur, The slap echoed through the hall, sending Jack stumbling back a step. His cheek burned, but he straightened, no tears, no hatred in his eyes, only resolve. The few guests who had been pretending not to watch now couldn't look away. "You're fired, right now," Nathan's voice dropped to a menacing whisper, "and I'll make sure you never work in Dallas again." Jack nodded slowly, touching his stinging cheek. "Maybe you're right, but at least I'll still be able to look my son in the eye." He raised his phone, finger pressing record. "If no one will believe me, at least they'll be able to see." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Nathan Reed's face. Before he could respond, a voice called from the kitchen doorway. "Enough." Carlos stood there, chef's coat unbuttoned, arms crossed. "I think you should stop, Mr. Reed." "What is this? Some kind of staff rebellion?" Nathan's composure cracked further as he glanced around, noticing more phones emerging from pockets and purses. "This isn't about staff, sir." Carlos walked forward, standing beside Jack. "This stopped being about positions when you hit your pregnant wife in public." Nathan loosened his tie, eyes darting between the growing number of recording devices. His PR training kicked in, forcing a smile. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Sophia, we're leaving." But Sophia remained on the floor, trembling, her hands still protecting her belly. A security guard finally approached, uncertain whom to assist. "Call 911, Carlos instructed the guard firmly. "She needs medical attention." Nathan stepped toward Carlos, voice rising in fury. "All of you are fired. I'll make sure no company in Texas hires you again." Jack's tone remained surprisingly calm. "You can take our jobs, sir, but you can't take our conscience." Carlos nodded beside him. "I'd rather lose my job than lose my humanity." A woman in her 50s wearing a crimson evening gown raised her phone, openly recording. Then another guest did the same. Within moments, at least 20 devices captured Nathan's increasingly agitated state. His empire wasn't built on steel, but on image, and that image was crumbling before everyone's eyes. Nathan looked around, face pale with rage, then turned sharply toward the exit. Before leaving, he pointed directly at Jack and Carlos. "You'll regret this. Both of you." "Maybe," Carlos replied coolly, "but not tonight." Paramedics arrived within minutes, helping Sophia onto a stretcher. She was still trembling, tears streaming silently down her face. But before the ambulance doors closed, she looked back at Jack and Carlos. "Thank you." Two simple words heavy enough to last a lifetime. Jack only nodded, a silent promise passing between them. He knew this was just the beginning. At 4:30 a.m., Jack turned his key in the lock of apartment 3B at the Oak Hill complex. The building had seen better decades. Water stains mapped the hallway ceiling, and the elevator had been temporarily out of service since last Christmas. But it was what he could afford on a maintenance worker's salary while raising Ethan alone. Mrs. Rodriguez, his elderly neighbor, dozed on the worn couch, her silver-streaked black hair falling across her face. 7-year-old Ethan was curled against her side, his Batman pajamas twisted from restless sleep, clutching the one-eared teddy bear that had been his constant companion since Mary's death. Jack gently lifted his son, noting how much heavier he seemed than just months ago. The boy stirred slightly, mumbling, "Daddy, love you. I love you too, bud." Jack carried him to the bedroom, laying him on the bottom bunk of their shared bed, pulling the thin blanket over his small frame. Mrs. Rodriguez stirred, adjusting her glasses. "You're late tonight, mijo. Everything okay?" Jack touched his cheek, the skin still tender where Nathan had struck him. "Just a long shift. Thank you for staying." Her eyes lingered on the bruise forming, but she asked no questions. That's what neighbors do. She gathered her crocheting, moving slowly toward the door. The boy did his homework and ate all his dinner. "He's a good kid, Jack." After she left, Jack sat beside his sleeping son, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest. His phone buzzed with a notification. 47 missed calls, 128 messages, most from unknown numbers, a few from co-workers, and one from Sapphire Hall management. "You are hereby suspended effective immediately. We are conducting an internal investigation into your disruptive behavior during last night's event. Please refrain from contacting clients or media. Any violation will result in legal action." Jack set the phone down, the message expected but still painful to read. A text from Carlos appeared. Me too. They said I acted beyond authority. We need to talk. He showered quickly, the hot water stinging his face but washing away some of the night's tension. The bathroom mirror revealed a purplish bruise blooming across his cheekbone. He'd have to explain that to Ethan in the morning. Jack slipped into bed, careful not to wake his son, but sleep refused to come. His mind replayed the evening's events, questioning his choices. Had he done the right thing? What would happen to them now? Rent was due in 2 weeks. Ethan needed new shoes for school. The refrigerator was making that whirring noise again. He reached for the framed photo on his nightstand, Mary laughing into the camera, her dark hair blowing across her face at the state fair 3 summers ago. 6 months later, she'd be gone, her car crushed by a semi that crossed the center line in a rainstorm. Jack had held her hand in the hospital as she made him promise to take care of Ethan, her voice weak but insistent. I'm okay, just look after our boy. Morning came too quickly. Jack woke at exactly 6:00 a.m., his body trained to this schedule regardless of how little sleep he'd gotten. Ethan still slumbered peacefully, unaware of how their lives had changed overnight. Jack moved through their morning routine on autopilot. Cereal with the last of the milk, toast with peanut butter, checking Ethan's backpack for homework. His son's chatter about yesterday's math test and playground politics provided a welcome distraction. Dad, what happened to your face? Ethan's innocent question came as they walked to the bus stop, his small hand warm in Jack's larger one. Jack considered his options. He never lied to his son, but some truths needed careful framing for a 7-year-old. I saw someone doing something wrong at work, and I had to step in. Did the bad guy hit you? Ethan's eyes widened. Yeah, buddy, he did. But sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy. That's what makes it important. Like when Bobby tried to take Mikey's lunch money, and I told the teacher even though Bobby said he'd put worms in my backpack. Jack squeezed his son's hand, pride warming his chest despite everything else. Exactly like that. You did the right thing, even though it was hard. The yellow school bus rumbled around the corner. Jack knelt to hug his son goodbye, inhaling the scent of children's shampoo and the faint trace of peanut butter. Remember what we always say? Jack prompted. Ethan's face grew serious, reciting their morning mantra. Be kind, be brave, be smart. That's my boy. See you at 3. As the bus pulled away, Jack's phone vibrated with a text from Carlos. Oak Bend Cafe, 9:30 a.m. Important. The cafe sat at the edge of Oak Hill, where working-class homes gave way to slightly better neighborhoods. Carlos already occupied a corner booth, 2 coffee cups steaming on the table. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his usual confident posture diminished. They took down the video. Carlos spoke without preamble, his fingers tapping nervously on his cup. From X, YouTube, everywhere. Tried to open it this morning. Files corrupted. Jack pulled out his phone, stomach sinking as he found his recording unplayable. 15 crucial minutes from 9:47 to 10:02 p.m., gone as if they never happened. How is that possible? Carlos shook his head grimly. Nathan Reed isn't just anyone. He's got lawyers, IT specialists, crisis managers. If he wants something erased, it gets erased. Jack slumped in his seat, hands covering his face. So we've got nothing? Not exactly. Carlos reached into his pocket, producing a USB drive that he placed carefully on the table. I copied footage from the restaurant's security system before they wiped it. Not crystal clear, but you can see him push her, slap you, and the crowd just watching. Jack stared at the tiny device like it was made of gold. How did you get this? I know the head of tech. He sent it to me before the deletion order came down. Carlos leaned forward, voice dropping. But Jack, if we use this, we could get sued. They'll say we stole company property. And if we don't, Jack asked, already knowing the answer, then Grace never gets justice. Nathan walks free, and last night becomes just another misunderstanding. Jack stared out the window at Dallas beyond, luxury cars gliding past, people in suits striding purposefully into glass towers. The world of the powerful continuing unchanged while his own had been upended. We use it. His decision was quiet but final. Carlos nodded, seemingly unsurprised. That's what I thought. He pushed his coffee aside. But we need help. Nathan's already controlling the narrative. Check social media. They're saying you're an unstable employee with a grudge. Jack had never been much for social media. His only accounts existed to see photos of Ethan that relatives posted. He opened X on his phone, searching Sapphire Hall incident. The results made his blood run cold. Sources close to Visionary Tech CEO Nathan Reed report that last night's disturbance was caused by a disgruntled employee with a history of emotional issues. Another post claimed Jack had been stalking Sophia Reed. A third suggested he was seeking fame or a settlement. There were even hints about his mental state after Mary's death. "How do they know about Mary?" Jack whispered, hands trembling. Carlos's expression darkened. "They're digging into your past, man. This is what people like Reed do. They destroy anyone who threatens them." Jack's phone rang. An unknown number. He almost declined it but answered on impulse. "Jack Wilson?" A woman's voice, direct and professional. "Yes, this is Rebecca Morgan, independent journalist. I saw what happened last night. Someone I trust at Sapphire Hall sent me the original video before it disappeared. I want to help you tell this story properly." Jack hesitated, looking questioningly at Carlos, who shrugged. "How do I know I can trust you?" The woman laughed softly. "You don't, but you don't have much choice either. Nathan's using money to silence everyone. But you know who he can't silence as easily?" "Who?" "Sophia Reed." Rebecca's voice grew urgent. "She's at Dallas Memorial Hospital. They're keeping it quiet, but I have a contact there. A nurse who was once a domestic violence victim herself. She saw your video and wants to help. But we need to move quickly. They're transferring Sophia to a private facility at 9 a.m. tomorrow." Jack checked his watch. 24 hours to reach Sophia before she disappeared into Nathan's controlled environment. "But how do we get to her?" "They'll have security. My contact will help us." Rebecca paused. "This is your chance to make sure last night wasn't for nothing. Are you in?" Jack thought of his son's words that morning about standing up to bullies despite the consequences. He thought of Mary, who always believed in doing what was right, not what was easy. He thought of Sophia's whispered thank you before the ambulance doors closed. "I'm in. What's the plan?" After hanging up, Jack explained the situation to Carlos, who immediately offered to watch Ethan while Jack met with Rebecca. They worked out a meeting time for 5 a.m. the next morning at the hospital service entrance. When Jack returned to his apartment, the day's mail waited in his box. Among the bills and advertisements was an envelope with no return and address. Inside, he found a single sheet of paper with typed text. "Stay silent or face consequences. This is your only warning." He crumpled the note, tossing it into the trash. 3 years ago, such a threat might have terrified him. But losing Mary had taught him the hardest lesson possible. Sometimes the worst thing imaginable already happened, and you somehow survived it. What could they take from him now except Ethan? And for his son, he would fight anyone, even a billionaire. Jack spent the afternoon researching Nathan Reed, learning what he could about the tech mogul. Founded Visionary Tech 12 years ago, built it into a software empire specializing in predictive analytics. Recently secured an $800 million contract with the state of Texas. Forbes 40 under 40. Major political donor. Philanthropist. The perfect public image. But as Jack dug deeper, he found whispers. High turnover among female executives. Sudden departures of personal assistants. Confidential settlements with former employees. Nothing concrete, nothing provable, just smoke suggesting hidden fires. At 3 p.m., Jack waited outside Ethan's school, trying to appear normal despite everything crumbling around them. His son bounded down the steps, backpack bouncing, launching into an excited description of the class turtle's escape attempt. Jack listened, grateful for the momentary distraction from adult concerns. They stopped for ice cream, a rare treat justified by the circumstances, though Jack didn't explain that to Ethan. As they sat on a park bench, Jack's phone chimed with a notification. Someone had uploaded a video titled, "Billionaire CEO Assaults Pregnant Wife," the video they don't want you to see. Jack nearly choked on his ice cream. It wasn't their footage. This appeared to be shot by a guest from across the room, the quality grainy but undeniable. Nathan's face was clearly visible as he struck Sophia, as was Jack stepping forward to intervene. The video had already gathered 50,000 views in under an hour. Dad, can I play on the swings? Ethan's question pulled Jack back to the present. Sure, buddy. I'll be right here watching. As Ethan raced toward the playground, Jack's phone rang again. Carlos, have you seen it? The video's everywhere now. Just saw it. Who posted it? No idea, but Reed's team is scrambling to take it down. They can't keep up with the copies. Jack, this changes everything. People are asking questions now. By the time Jack and Ethan returned home, the video had over 500,000 views. Hashtag Justice for Sophia was trending, along with Who is Jack Wilson? His phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages from journalists seeking comment. Mrs. Rodriguez knocked on their door just after dinner, her face creased with concern. There was a man asking questions about you in the building earlier. Didn't like the look of him. Be careful, mijo. The warning sent a chill through Jack. He double-checked the locks on the windows and doors before helping Ethan with his bath and bedtime routine. As his son slept, Jack sat in the darkened living room, watching headlights sweep across the walls whenever a car passed outside. His phone lit up with another unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. Jack Wilson? A deep male voice, professionally neutral. Yes, this is Victor Collins, legal counsel for Nathan Reed. A brief pause. My client would like to resolve this situation amicably. Jack's grip tightened on the phone. What does that mean exactly? Mr. Reed is prepared to offer compensation for any misunderstanding that occurred last night. In exchange, we'd require a non-disclosure agreement and a public statement clarifying that what appeared in the video was taken out of context. Compensation? Jack echoed, a bitter taste filling his mouth. We're prepared to offer $50,000, immediately transferable to your account. The figure hung in the air, more money than Jack had seen at once in his entire life. Money that could secure Ethan's future, pay for college someday, move them to a better apartment with reliable heat and no cockroaches. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine taking it, the pragmatic choice, the safe choice for his son. Then he remembered Sophia's bruised face, her hand protectively cradling her unborn child. He thought of his son growing up learning that justice had a price tag. Please tell Mr. Reed I'm not interested. Jack's voice remained steady, surprising even himself. 100,000. The lawyer didn't miss a beat. Final offer. Jack glanced at his sleeping son through the bedroom doorway, then at Mary's photo on the shelf. I'm not interested at any price. Good night, Mr. Collins. He hung up before the lawyer could respond, half expecting the phone to ring again immediately. Instead, a text message appeared. You've made a serious mistake. We tried to be reasonable. Jack slept fitfully that night, waking at every sound from the hallway or street below. At 4:30 a.m., he gently woke Mrs. Rodriguez, explaining that he needed to leave early for an important meeting. She agreed to stay with the still sleeping Ethan, asking no questions but pressing his arm supportively. It's doing the right thing that matters in this life, she said simply. Not the easy thing. Jack drove through the pre-dawn darkness to Dallas Memorial Hospital, parking in the far corner of the nearly empty lot. Rebecca Morgan waited by the service entrance, younger than he had expected, perhaps 29 or 30, with intense eyes and a determined set to her jaw. Ready? She asked without preamble. Jack nodded, following her through a side door where a nurse named Linda met them. Around 40, with kind eyes and efficient movements, she guided them quickly down a quiet corridor. 2 security guards in the main lobby, she whispered. They're only allowing family, but there's a separate passage through the maternity ward. We have about 20 minutes before shift change. They moved through cold, white hallways that smelled of disinfectant, making Jack's stomach tighten involuntarily. Hospitals held no good memories for him, only the final moments with Mary as machines beeped in countdown to heartbreak. Linda knocked on door 427, 3 light taps. A weak voice responded from inside. Come in. Jack stepped into the dimly lit room, seeing Sophia Reed in person for the first time without her husband's looming presence. She appeared smaller somehow, gaunt despite her pregnancy, blonde hair matted, eyes swollen. The bruise on her cheek stood stark against her pale skin, but what pierced Jack's heart most was how she curled protectively around her belly, like a wounded animal shielding its young. Sophia struggled to sit upright, one hand steadying herself on the bedrail. You're Jack Wilson? Jack swallowed nervously. Yes, ma'am, I'm Jack. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. You, you were the only one who stepped in. I only did what needed to be done, ma'am. No. Sophia shook her head, voice trembling. You did what no one else dared to do. For 3 years, no one dared. She cried then, not in dramatic sobs, but in a steady flow, as if a dam holding back 3 years of fear and pain had finally cracked. Rebecca handed her a tissue, letting her compose herself before speaking. Sophia, I'm Rebecca Morgan, an investigative journalist. Jack and I want to help you, but we need you to tell us everything. Can you do that? Sophia looked down at her hands where tiny scars and faded bruises told their own story. If I speak, he'll kill me. He can't. Jack knelt beside the bed, meeting her eyes. Not with the whole world watching. Not when you're no longer alone. For the first time in years, Sophia saw someone who seemed genuinely concerned for her welfare. Someone who had already risked something to protect her. She took a deep breath. Okay, I'll talk. She began at the beginning. She met Nathan in spring 2021 at a tech conference in Austin. She was a marketing director at a small startup. He was the keynote speaker, magnetic, confident, speaking about the future as if he already owned it. They chatted afterward and he asked her to dinner, then another and another. Nathan seemed perfect, opening car doors, sending flowers, whispering promises about tomorrow. 2 months later, he proposed. Sophia's family urged caution, but she was entranced, believing she'd found her fairy tale. They married in December 2021, a lavish Charleston wedding featured in society magazines. But on their Maldives honeymoon, Nathan changed. He checked her phone, questioned who she texted, why her dress was too short, why she smiled at a male server. At first, Sophia told herself he was jealous because he loved her so deeply. Then came the shouting, the shoves, the first slap in March 2022. They fought because Sophia wanted to visit her parents. Nathan said, "You don't need them. You have me." When she pushed back, his hand connected with her face, sharp, stinging, sudden. Afterward, he knelt, cried, apologized. "I didn't mean to. I love you too much. I'm afraid of losing you." Sophia forgave him, believing it was an isolated incident. But it happened again, and this time there was no apology, only "you deserved it. You made me angry." She tried calling her mother once, but Nathan had taken her phone, installed tracking apps, monitored every text, listened to every call. When she attempted to run, Nathan found her at a hotel and slammed her head against the wall. "Where do you think you're going? You belong to me forever." From then on, he isolated her completely. No friends, no leaving the house without him. Sophia became a prisoner in their multi-million-dollar mansion. Then she got pregnant. "I thought maybe now he'll change. Maybe when there's a baby, he'll be different." Sophia's voice cracked. But he got worse. He kicked me in the stomach when dinner was late, shoved me on the stairs when I cried, tightened his hands around my throat when I begged to call a doctor. The gala night was Sophia's last desperate attempt to signal for help. She'd spilled her drink deliberately, hoping someone would notice, someone would see. And Jack did. "You saved my life. And my baby's." Sophia's eyes shone with tears and something else, determination. Jack shook his head. "You saved yourself. You were brave enough to come here, brave enough to tell your story." Sophia managed a weak smile. She reached into the drawer beside her bed and removed a USB drive. "This is everything I have. Footage from our home security cameras, audio recordings, photos of my injuries after each incident." Rebecca took the drive, her hand trembling slightly. "Sophia, you know what this means, right? If we release this, there's no going back." "I do. But I can't let my child grow up in that house. I can't." Jack stood, voice firm. "We'll protect you, I promise," Sophia nodded. "I believe you." As they prepared to leave, shouts echoed from the hallway. "They're here, room 427. Two security guards rushed forward, blocking the door. "You're not authorized to be here. Out, now." Rebecca stepped forward, keeping her voice steady. "We're journalists. We have the right. You have no rights here. Leave before we call the police." From her bed, Sophia spoke, weak but resolute. "I want them here. This is my decision." One guard stepped closer. "Mrs. Hawthorne," Mr. Reed instructed. "I don't care what he instructed. This is my room. I want them here." The guards hesitated, clearly unprepared for resistance. Linda stepped between them. voice firm. Per hospital policy, the patient decides who may enter her room. If you interfere, I will call hospital security. As the guards retreated to make phone calls, Jack, Rebecca, and Linda knew their time was limited. They quickly finalized plans. Rebecca would review all evidence and prepare a comprehensive report focusing on Sophia's testimony. Jack would give a formal statement supporting her claims. Linda would ensure Sophia had proper medical documentation of her injuries. Just before leaving, Jack turned back to Sophia. "We'll make this right." Her eyes, though tired, held new strength. "I know you will. Thank you for seeing me when no one else would." In the hallway, Linda guided them toward a service elevator. "Nathan's men will be here within the hour. Sophia needs to file for an emergency protective order immediately. I'll help with the medical documentation." Rebecca nodded briskly. "I'll contact a lawyer who specializes in high-profile domestic violence cases. We need to move quickly." Outside in the gray dawn, Jack felt exhaustion catching up with him. The adrenaline that had carried him through the night was fading, leaving bone-deep weariness in its wake. "Get some sleep," Rebecca advised. "I'll start working through Sophia's evidence and call you later today. The real fight is just beginning." Jack drove home slowly, mind racing despite his fatigue. He'd just made an enemy of one of the most powerful men in Texas. For Ethan's sake, he needed to be prepared for whatever came next. Mrs. Rodriguez was fixing breakfast when he arrived, Ethan already dressed for school and chattering about a science project. Jack maintained a facade of normalcy, helping with backpacks and lunchboxes, promising to check on the volcano experiment that evening. Only after dropping Ethan at school did Jack finally collapse onto his bed, too exhausted even to remove his shoes. He slept fitfully for 3 hours, waking to his phone's insistent buzzing. Rebecca. Her voice crackled with a mixture of exhaustion and excitement. "Jack, I've been going through Sophia's evidence. It's worse than we thought, but it's also everything we need. This isn't just a few incidents. It's systematic, documented abuse going back years. What's our next step?" Jack pushed himself upright, rubbing his eyes. "I'm editing together a comprehensive report now. Video, audio, photos, medical records, everything. Once it's ready, we release it simultaneously to every major outlet. Nathan won't be able to suppress it all. What about Sophia? Is she safe?" "For now, Linda says Nathan's lawyers are trying to have her transferred to a private facility, claiming mental health issues. But the hospital administration is pushing back, especially after what the guards pulled this morning." Jack's other line beeped. "Carlos calling. I need to take this, Rebecca. Keep me posted." He switched calls, Carlos's voice immediately filling the line. "Jack, man, you need to get home now. Something's happened." Cold dread pulled in Jack's stomach. "What is it? Is it Ethan?" No, he's fine, still at school, but your apartment? You need to see this." 20 minutes later, Jack stood in the doorway of his small apartment, unable to process what he was seeing. Someone had broken in while he was gone, but this wasn't a normal burglary. This was a message. Every photo of Mary had been smashed, glass fragments glittering across the floor. Ethan's drawings had been torn from the refrigerator and shredded. Furniture was overturned, dishes broken, and spray painted across the living room wall in red letters, "Silence or worse." Carlos stood beside him, face grim. "I came to drop off some food for you guys. Found it like this about an hour ago." Jack moved through the wreckage in a daze, cataloging the damage. Most of their possessions could be replaced, but Mary's photos, the physical reminders of her smile, her eyes, those were irreplaceable. He picked up a fractured frame, carefully removing the torn photograph inside. "I called the police," Carlos continued. "They took a report, but they're saying it looks like a standard break-in. They didn't seem interested in connecting it to Nathan Reed." "Of course not." Jack's voice sounded hollow even to his own ears. "A man like Reed probably has half the department in his pocket." He checked his watch. 2 hours until Ethan's school ended. Not enough time to clean up everything, but maybe enough to remove the worst of it, to shield his son from this violation. As Jack and Carlos worked silently, clearing broken glass and righting furniture, neighbors peered through the open doorway. Some offered help, but others whispered among themselves, casting suspicious glances. Word had already spread about Jack's confrontation with Nathan Reed, and opinions seemed divided about whether he was brave or foolish. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived with cleaning supplies and fierce determination. "This is not right," she declared, attacking the spray paint with solvent. "In my country, we had men who thought they were above the law because of money. They are always surprised when ordinary people stand up." By the time Jack left to pick up Ethan, the apartment was at least functional, though the walls still bore faint red traces despite their best efforts. Carlos promised to stay and continue cleaning, while Mrs. Rodriguez insisted on preparing dinner for them all. At school, Jack tried to maintain a normal expression as Ethan bounded toward him, lunchbox swinging. The boy chattered happily about his day until they turned the corner toward their building. "Why are Mr. Carlos and Mrs. Rodriguez at our house? Did something happen?" Ethan's perceptiveness never failed to surprise Jack. "We had a little problem at the apartment, buddy." Jack chose his words carefully. "Some bad people made a mess, but our friends are helping us clean up." Ethan's eyes widened. "Was it robbers?" "Something like that." Jack squeezed his son's hand. "But the important thing is that we're okay, and we have good friends." Inside, Ethan surveyed the apartment with solemn eyes, immediately noticing the missing photos of his mother. "Where are Mom's pictures?" Jack knelt to his son's level. "Someone broke them, but I saved all the photos. We'll get new frames this weekend, okay?" Ethan nodded, but his lower lip trembled. "Was it because of what you did? The man who hit the lady?" Jack hesitated, torn between protecting his son and being honest. Before he could answer, Mrs. Rodriguez intervened. "Your father did a brave thing, Niño. Sometimes when you stand up to bad people, other bad people get angry. But that doesn't mean you stop doing what's right." Ethan considered this, then asked in a small voice, "Are the bad people going to hurt us?" Jack pulled his son into a tight embrace. "I won't let anyone hurt you, Ethan. I promise." That night, after Carlos and Mrs. Rodriguez had gone and Ethan had finally fallen asleep, Jack sat alone in the dimly lit kitchen. His phone vibrated with a text from Rebecca. "Finish the report. Releasing tomorrow morning. Be prepared. This will change everything." He stared at the message, the gravity of their situation settling over him like a heavy blanket. There would be no going back after tomorrow. Nathan Reed would unleash everything in his considerable arsenal against them. The break-in was just the beginning. Jack moved to the window, looking out at the Dallas skyline glittering in the distance. Somewhere out there, Nathan Reed was probably in his penthouse, surrounded by luxury and power, making plans to crush the janitor who dared to challenge him. But somewhere else in that same skyline, Sophia Reed was gathering her courage to break free from years of abuse. Other women who had suffered at Nathan's hands might see her story and find their own voice. And here in this small apartment, Ethan slept peacefully, unaware that his father was teaching him the most important lesson of all, that ordinary people could still stand up for what was right, no matter the kiddo. Jack turned from the window, a new resolve strengthening his spine. Let Reed send his lawyers, his thugs, his threats. Some things were worth fighting for, even if you lost everything else in the process. His phone buzzed again, this time an email notification from Ethan's school. The subject line made his heart sink. Concerns regarding recent incidents. The message was diplomatically worded but clear. Other parents had expressed concerns about their children associating with Ethan, given the public situation involving his father. Jack closed his eyes, feeling the weight of consequences settling onto his shoulders. He'd known there would be fallout, but he hadn't fully considered how it might affect Ethan's life. His son had already lost his mother. Now he might lose friends, face whispers and stares, become collateral damage in a battle he was too young to understand. For the first time since that moment in Sapphire Hall, doubt crept into Jack's mind. Had he made the right choice? Was standing up for a stranger worth putting his own son at risk? A soft knock at the front door pulled him from his thoughts. Jack approached cautiously, checking through the peephole before opening it. A manila envelope lay on the welcome mat, his name printed in block letters on the front. Inside was a stack of $100 bills, $5,000 at least, in a typed note. "This is just the beginning. Silence will be rewarded." Jack held the money, feeling its weight, not just physically but morally. $5,000 could solve so many problems. Rent for months, new clothes for Ethan, maybe even a down payment on a used car to replace his aging pickup. It was more money than he'd see in 3 months of work. He carried the envelope to the kitchen table, spreading the bills out under the harsh fluorescent light. No one would know if he took it. He could claim he'd reconsidered, that he wanted to protect his son, that he realized he was out of his depth. The money seemed to whisper promises, security, comfort, an easier path. All he had to do was stay silent, step back into the shadows where people like him belonged. Jack's eyes drifted to Ethan's backpack hanging by the door, a school assignment partially visible in the front pocket. His son's handwriting, carefully formed letters, spelling out, "My hero is my dad because he helps people who need help." Something hardened in Jack's chest. He gathered the money, carried it to the kitchen sink, and reached for the matches they kept for birthday candles. One by one, he lit the bills, watching as they curled and blackened, dropping the ashes into the sink. He recorded the whole process on his phone, ending with a simple message. "I cannot be bought. Not for 5,000, not for 5 million. Some things aren't for sale." With hands that no longer trembled, Jack sent the video to Rebecca. Within minutes, his phone rang. "That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen." Rebecca's voice held a mixture of admiration and concern. "Do you know what you just did?" "I made my choice clear," Jack replied simply. "You just burned enough money to pay your rent for months. I know. But I would have burned my self-respect along with it if I'd kept it. And what lesson would that teach my son?" Rebecca was silent for a moment. "We release everything tomorrow at 9 o'clock a.m. Every major outlet, social media, everywhere at once. They won't be able to suppress it all." Jack gazed at his sleeping son in the darkened bedroom. "What happens after that?" "Either we bring down a billionaire abuser or—" Rebecca hesitated. "Or he destroys us," Jack finished for her, "but at least we'll know we tried." After hanging up, Jack checked all the locks again and pushed a chair under the doorknob. A futile gesture against the forces aligned against them, but it provided some small comfort. He finally crawled into bed beside his sleeping son, drawing the boy's warm body close against the chill of uncertainty that awaited them tomorrow. Across town in the gleaming glass tower that housed Visionary Tech's headquarters, Nathan Reed paced his corner office. The Dallas skyline spread before him like a kingdom, lights twinkling in the darkness as if in deference to his power. But for the first time in years, that power felt precarious. Victor Collins, his chief legal counsel, sat with practiced stillness in an Italian leather chair, watching his client's agitation with professional detachment. He refused the money. Nathan stopped his pacing, incredulous. A fucking janitor turned down $5,000? Not only refused it, Victor's tone remained measured. He burned it, on video, which is now circulating online. Nathan hurled his crystal whiskey glass against the wall, sending shards and amber liquid exploding across the pristine white surface. "Are you telling me we can't control one minimum wage nobody?" Victor adjusted his tie, unfazed by the outburst. "We're dealing with someone who isn't motivated by typical incentives. The normal playbook isn't working. Then find something that does work." Nathan's face flushed with rage. "Dig deeper. Everyone has pressure points. His son, his job, his reputation. Find something we can use." "We're already exploring options," Victor assured him. "We've initiated a comprehensive background investigation. The incident at his apartment was meant to frighten him, but it seems to have had the opposite effect." "Then stop playing games and handle it." Nathan slammed his palm against his desk. "I want him crushed. Completely. I want him to regret the day he ever looked in my direction." Victor rose, straightening his suit jacket. "I'll escalate our efforts. But Nathan, we should discuss containment strategies for tomorrow. Our sources indicate Morgan is preparing to release a comprehensive report, including Sophia's evidence." "That bitch." Nathan's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "She actually gave them the footage from our house?" "Apparently so." Victor's expression remained professionally neutral. "We need to prepare for significant media fallout. The stock has already dropped 12% on rumors alone." "Then buy it back," Nathan shouted. "Call our friends at the networks. Have them bury it. This is what I pay all of you for. We're implementing countermeasures, but this situation has evolved." Victor chose his words carefully. "The public narrative is shifting. Hashtag Justice for Sophia is trending globally. Your board members are receiving inquiries. The state contract is under review. Nathan stared out at his empire, feeling it slipping through his fingers like sand. His mind flashed back to his childhood home. His father's rage, his mother's bruised face, the helpless feeling as he hid in his closet, promising himself that one day he would be powerful enough that no one could ever make him feel that way again. Now a janitor, a nobody, threatened everything he'd built. The thought was intolerable. Whatever it takes, Victor. Nathan's voice was deadly calm now. Whatever it takes, this ends tomorrow, one way or another. As dawn broke over Dallas, two men in very different circumstances prepared for battle, one with an arsenal of wealth, influence, and ruthless determination. The other with nothing but truth and the stubborn courage to stand by it. The stage was set for a collision that would change both their lives forever, reverberating far beyond the glittering ballroom where their paths had first crossed. Rebecca Morgan's apartment doubled as her office, a one-bedroom converted loft in Deep Ellum, with exposed brick walls covered in news clippings, case files, and a sprawling corkboard tracking Dallas's power players. At 4:30 a.m., she hunched over three monitors, dark circles shadowing her eyes as she assembled the final touches on what she'd come to think of as the Nathan Reed file. On screen one, security footage from the Reed mansion, Sophia being shoved downstairs, slapped across dinner tables, backed fearfully into corners. On screen two, hospital records documenting accidental falls, kitchen mishaps, and sports injuries. The familiar pattern of excuses domestic violence victims were pressured to provide. On screen three, a timeline she'd constructed, meticulously connecting incidents to Nathan's business deals and public appearances, revealing how his violence escalated with his success. Rebecca paused the footage of Nathan grabbing Sophia by the throat, her eyes fixed on the terror in the other woman's face. 5 years ago, Rebecca had worn that same expression when tech venture capitalist Adam Williams pinned her against his office wall. She'd reported it, been dismissed as unstable, lost her job at the Dallas Tribune, and watched her journalism career crumble while Williams continued climbing the social ladder. The final rendering completed, a 15-minute video masterclass in investigative journalism. Not sensationalized, not exploitative, but meticulously documented truth that would be impossible to dismiss. She scheduled simultaneous uploads to 27 platforms for 9:00 a.m., then sent secure links to contacts at major news outlets with a simple message: the story Nathan Reed doesn't want told. Her phone buzzed. Jack Wilson, I can't sleep. Ethan's finally settled down, but I keep checking the windows. Rebecca could hear the tension in his voice. Do you think they'll try something else before morning? They're calculating their options. But Jack, I need to warn you, once this goes live, your life will change forever. The money, the break-in, that was just the opening act. Jack's laugh held no humor. My life already changed the moment I stepped forward at that gala. At least now we're fighting back. Rebecca glanced at the clock. 4 hours until detonation. You should know, my story includes details about your past, how you lost your wife, became a single father, took the janitor job to care for Ethan. People will recognize you everywhere. Are you prepared for that? The silence stretched long enough that Rebecca wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, as long as it helps Sophia and others like her, I can handle whatever comes. As dawn broke over Dallas, Jack sat at his kitchen table nursing his third cup of coffee. Ethan still slept, exhausted from nightmares that had woken him 3 times. Jack had spent the night alternating between comforting his son and checking locks, jumping at every creak and distant car door. At 8:45 a.m., Carlos texted, watching the clock, you ready? Jack wasn't ready, not for his private life to become public spectacle, not for corporate lawyers to dissect his every past mistake, not for whatever retaliation Nathan Reed might unleash. But he texted back, as ready as I'll ever be. At precisely 9:00 a.m., Rebecca's video went live. Jack watched on his phone as her narration began, professional and measured. This investigation reveals a pattern of systematic abuse by one of Dallas's most powerful business leaders. The evidence unfolded like a horror movie. Security footage showing Nathan's escalating violence, medical records documenting Sophia's injuries, audio recordings of threats. Interspersed were clips of Nathan at charity events, receiving business awards, shaking hands with politicians. The carefully constructed public image juxtaposed against the monster behind closed doors. The video concluded with Jack's intervention at the gala and Sophia's hospital testimony, her voice trembling but determined. I'm speaking out because I want my child to be born into a world where truth matters more than power. Within minutes, Jack's phone exploded with notifications. The video was being shared thousands of times per minute. Hashtag Down with Reed and hashtag Believe Sophia trended nationally. News alerts from every major network flashed across his screen. Ethan wandered into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Dad, why is your phone going crazy? Jack quickly silenced the device. Just some work stuff, buddy. How about pancakes for breakfast? As Jack mixed batter and heated the griddle, trying to maintain normalcy for his son's sake, his phone continued vibrating across the counter. Journalists, talk shows, lawyers, and strangers, all wanting a piece of the janitor who dared stand up to a billionaire. At Visionary Tech headquarters, chaos reigned. Nathan Reed barricaded himself in his office as the company's stock plummeted in the first hour of trading. The board demanded an emergency meeting. Major clients began publicly distancing themselves. The $800 million state contract was officially under review. Victor Collins orchestrated the defense, deploying teams of lawyers, PR specialists, and digital experts in a desperate effort to contain the damage. Their first press release called the allegations malicious fabrications by disgruntled individuals seeking financial gain. And their second, rushed out an hour later as evidence mounted, pivoted to suggestions of Nathan's stress-related mental health challenges and promises of appropriate therapeutic intervention. By noon, Jack couldn't ignore the situation any longer. News vans parked outside his apartment complex. Reporters called out questions as he hustled Ethan to the car for an emergency grocery run. Neighbors either avoided eye contact or stared openly. A local TV station was already interviewing Mrs. Rodriguez, who fiercely defended the good man who lives upstairs. Mrs. Rodriguez waved Jack over as he returned with grocery bags. They've been asking questions about you, mijo. I told them you are a man who works hard and loves his son. Nothing else is their business. Jack thanked her with a tired smile. The reporters are making Ethan nervous. Could he stay with you for a bit while I handle some calls? Inside Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment, Ethan settled with a coloring book while Jack stepped onto her small balcony to return the most urgent calls. First was Christine Hayes, the lawyer Rebecca had connected him with. The evidence is extraordinary, Mr. Wilson. Christine's voice carried the crisp confidence of someone accustomed to high-stakes litigation. Reed's team is already moving to discredit you and Miss Morgan, but they can't refute the security footage from their own home. I'd like to represent you and Sophia pro bono. This case could establish precedent for holding powerful abusers accountable. Jack leaned against the railing, watching a news helicopter circling overhead. I'm not looking for money or fame. I just want Sophia and her baby to be safe. That's admirable, but you need protection too. Reed's resources are virtually unlimited, and he's already deploying them against you. We need to file for restraining orders, prepare for potential defamation claims, and document any harassment or intimidation. As Jack agreed to meet Christine the following morning, a text from Rebecca flashed on his screen. Turn on CNN now. He rushed inside, asking Mrs. Rodriguez to turn on her television. The screen showed Nathan Reed at a hastily organized press conference, his usual commanding presence notably diminished. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his custom suit hung slightly askew. These vicious attacks on my character and my family are unconscionable. Nathan's voice wavered between indignation and what his PR team likely hoped would pass for vulnerability. My wife Sophia suffers from severe emotional instability, exacerbated by her pregnancy. The edited footage being circulated has been maliciously manipulated to create a false narrative. Jack's hands clenched as Nathan continued spinning his web of lies, painting himself as the concerned husband, Sophia as unstable, and Jack as an opportunistic troublemaker with a vendetta against successful people. Visionary Tech has retained forensic experts who will prove this so-called evidence has been doctored. Nathan's composure slipped momentarily. rage flashing behind his eyes. Meanwhile, my legal team is preparing action against those responsible for this defamatory attack. As for my wife, I'm working with medical professionals to ensure she receives the psychiatric care she urgently needs. The press conference imploded when a reporter asked about independent verification of the security footage. Nathan snapped, jabbing his finger toward the journalist. That's exactly the kind of irresponsible question that perpetuates these lies. You should be ashamed of your gutter journalism. As Nathan stormed off the stage, commentators immediately noted how his behavior undermined his message of concerned compassion. Jack's phone rang. Carlos, did you see that meltdown? Nathan just dug his own grave on national television. Relief washed briefly over Jack before reality reasserted itself. He's cornered now. That makes him more dangerous. Carlos hesitated before continuing. Listen, my sister's place in Houston is empty for a few weeks. Maybe you and Ethan should get out of Dallas until things cool down. The suggestion was tempting. Escape the media circus, the threats, the constant anxiety. But Jack knew running would only delay the inevitable. Nathan Reed would pursue him relentlessly, and more importantly, Sophia needed allies present and visible. We can't leave. This isn't just about me anymore. When Jack returned to his apartment that evening, he found another envelope, this one containing not money but photographs of Ethan at school, playing at recess, boarding the bus. A note read simply, "Still time to reconsider." Cold fury replaced fear. Jack called Detective Martinez, who had handled the break-in report. This time, the officer arrived promptly, his interest notably heightened now that the case involved a high-profile figure making national news. This crosses a line, targeting a child. Detective Martinez examined the photos. I'll request additional patrols in your neighborhood and alert Ethan's school. Is that enough? These people have resources, connections. The detective's expression softened slightly. Off the record, I'd consider alternative arrangements for your son, maybe with family outside Dallas. Jack had no family left, just Ethan, and friends like Carlos and Mrs. Rodriguez. But the detective's suggestion echoed his own growing concerns. Ethan's safety had to come first, above everything. That night, Jack sat Ethan down for the hardest conversation yet. Buddy, you know how sometimes when there's a storm, we have to take special precautions? Ethan nodded, eyes wide. Like when we put the emergency kit in the bathroom and stay away from windows? Exactly like that. Right now, there's a different kind of storm happening because Dad stood up to a bad man. And just like in a regular storm, we need to take special precautions to stay safe. Jack explained as gently as possible that Ethan would be staying with Carlos's family for a while, attending a different school temporarily. The boy's face crumpled in confusion and fear. But what about you? Who will take care of you if I'm gone? Jack pulled his son into a tight embrace, fighting back tears. I'll be okay, buddy. Sometimes being brave means doing hard things to protect the people we love. Remember what Mom always used to say? Ethan sniffled against Jack's shoulder. The right thing and the easy thing are hardly ever the same thing. That's right. And right now, the right thing is to keep you super safe while I finish helping that lady from the party. It won't be forever, just until the storm passes. As Ethan packed his favorite books and toys, Jack called Carlos to finalize arrangements. His friend would drive Ethan to Houston the next morning, where his sister and brother-in-law, both teachers, would care for him and enroll him in their school temporarily. After Ethan finally fell asleep, Jack sat in the darkened living room, the weight of separation already crushing his chest. Every instinct screamed to keep his son close, where he could personally ensure his safety. But that was emotion, not logic. The rational choice, the right choice, was to remove Ethan from the line of fire. Jack's phone lit up with an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. You're making this much harder than it needs to be. Victor Collins's voice was smooth as polished marble. The photographs were merely to illustrate a point, that your son's well-being should be your priority. Jack's grip tightened on the phone. Stay away from my son, or I swear. Mr. Collins interrupted with practiced calm. No one has any intention of harming your child, but children need stability, security. Your current crusade provides neither. Mr. Reed is prepared to be extremely generous, enough to secure your son's education through college, a new home in a better neighborhood, a fresh start. All he asks is your public statement acknowledging a misunderstanding. For a fleeting moment, Jack imagined the life Collins described. Financial security for Ethan. No more scraping by paycheck to paycheck. No more apartment with unreliable heating and paper-thin walls. An end to this nightmare. Then he remembered Sophia's bruised face, her hand protectively cradling her unborn child. He thought of his own son sleeping peacefully in the next room, blissfully unaware of the moral choice hanging in the balance. My son needs a father he can respect more than he needs a college fund. Jack's voice remained steady. Tell Mr. Reed he can keep his money. I'm not for sale. Collins sighed, the sound of a man checking off a failed strategy. Very well. Remember that we tried the reasonable approach when what comes next unfolds. The line went dead, leaving Jack alone with the implicit threat and the knowledge that he'd just closed the door on a peaceful resolution. Rebecca's voicemail greeted him when he called to report the exchange. He left a brief message, then tried Carlos, who answered immediately despite the late hour. They threatened Ethan. Jack's voice finally broke. I'm sending him to your sister's tomorrow. I need him away from this. Carlos cursed softly. You're doing the right thing. I'll pick him up at 7. My sister's already getting a room ready for him. After hanging up, Jack moved to the window, scanning the street below for unfamiliar vehicles or figures. The neighborhood seemed quiet, but the threat no longer came only from physical presence. It lived in phone calls, photographs, financial pressure, and the invisible web of influence that a man like Nathan Reed could deploy. For the first time, Jack allowed himself to feel the full weight of what he'd set in motion. He was one man, a janitor with no connections, no resources, no power, standing against an empire built on wealth, technology, and political relationships. The odds were overwhelming, yet something kept him anchored to this fight. Perhaps it was the memory of Mary, who had always believed in standing up for what was right. Perhaps it was the example he wanted to set for Ethan, even in separation. Or perhaps it was simply that, having witnessed Sophia's suffering, he couldn't turn away without betraying something fundamental in himself. Whatever the reason, Jack Wilson, janitor, single father, ordinary man, had become the unlikely fulcrum of a struggle far larger than himself. And despite the fear, despite the threats, despite the wisdom of retreat, he would see it through. Morning arrived with gray skies and a chill that seeped through Jack's thin jacket as he hugged Ethan goodbye beside Carlos's car. The boy's small backpack and duffel bag seemed inadequate containers for everything Jack wished he could provide. Safety, stability, freedom from worry. I'll call you every night before bed, buddy, and you can call me anytime you want. Jack knelt to his son's level, memorizing the features that seemed to change daily. The scattered freckles across his nose, the cowlick that refused to lie flat. Mary's eyes looking back at him. Ethan's bottom lip trembled despite his obvious effort to be brave. Will you be okay by yourself? Who will make sure you eat breakfast? Jack managed a smile. I promise to eat breakfast every day, and I won't be alone. Mrs. Rodriguez will check on me, and I've got Carlos and Rebecca and some new friends helping with the storm. The boy threw his arms around his father's neck, holding tight. When I grow up, I want to be brave like you. Jack closed his eyes against the burn of tears. You already are brave, Ethan. The bravest kid I know. The drive to Christine Hayes' law office downtown passed in a blur. Jack moved through the morning in a fugue state, the absence of Ethan creating a physical ache in his chest. Only when he entered the imposing glass building, passing through security checks to the 40th floor offices of Hayes, Ballantyne, and Cho, did the gravity of the situation pull him back to full awareness. Christine Hayes embodied the precision and confidence her reputation suggested. Tall, immaculately dressed, with an economy of movement that wasted nothing. Her corner office offered panoramic views of downtown Dallas, the visionary tech tower visible among the skyline. Rebecca was already there, along with Carlos and a petite woman Jack recognized from hospital photographs as Linda, the nurse who had helped them reach Sophia. 2 more attorneys from Christine's team completed the group gathered around the expansive conference table. Ms. Reed checked herself out of the hospital this morning against medical advice. Christine began without preamble. Nathan's team was attempting to have her involuntarily committed, but she left before the paperwork cleared. She's in a secure location now. Jack felt simultaneously relieved and concerned. Is she okay? The baby? Both stable for now, but her doctor is monitoring closely. Linda's expression remained professional, but her eyes betrayed concern. She's under significant stress, which isn't ideal at 32 weeks. Christine directed their attention to the wall screen, displaying a timeline of events and legal strategies. Visionary Tech has filed restraining orders against all of you, claiming harassment and defamation. They've also initiated a civil suit seeking damages of $50 million. $50 million? Carlos blanched. That's insane. They're just trying to scare us. Partly, Christine acknowledged, but they're also attempting to tie you up in legal proceedings to drain your resources and attention. Fortunately, our firm is countering with our own filings. Restraining orders against Nathan, emergency custody protection for Sophia and the unborn child, and expedited discovery motions to prevent destruction of evidence. The legal terminology washed over Jack in an overwhelming wave. 2 days ago, his biggest concern had been making rent. Now he sat in a luxury law office discussing million-dollar lawsuits and restraining orders. What about criminal charges? Rebecca leaned forward, fingers tapping impatiently on her laptop. The evidence is overwhelming. Why isn't Nathan in handcuffs? Christine's expression tightened. The Dallas County DA is a longtime recipient of Reed Foundation donations. He's moving cautiously, citing the need for thorough investigation before pursuing charges against a respected community leader. Money buys justice, or at least delays it. Rebecca's disgust was palpable. Meanwhile, Sophia remains at risk, and these three, she gestured to Jack, Carlos, and Linda, have their lives turned upside down. We're pursuing multiple angles. Christine maintained her composed demeanor. The FBI has opened a preliminary inquiry as some of Nathan's threats cross state lines, and public pressure is building. The DA's office received over 10,000 calls yesterday. The meeting continued with Christine outlining immediate protective measures, media strategies, and preparation for potential court appearances. Jack tried to focus, but exhaustion and worry about Ethan clouded his concentration. He startled when Christine addressed him directly. Mr. Wilson, we need to discuss your employment situation and financial stability during these proceedings. Jack shifted uncomfortably. I was suspended from Sapphire Hall, probably fired by now. I have some savings, but not much. I've been applying for electrician jobs. That was my trade before, but no callbacks yet. Christine nodded briskly. We anticipated this. Our firm has established a support fund for witnesses in high-profile cases. It will cover your basic expenses while you're unable to work due to the litigation. The offer of financial assistance simultaneously relieved and embarrassed Jack. He'd never taken handouts, had worked steadily since he was 16. But with Ethan's needs and no immediate job prospects, pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. After the meeting, Jack walked with Rebecca to the building's parking garage. You hanging in there? Her usual professional detachment softened slightly. Sent my son away this morning. Jack's voice caught. Never been separated from him before, not since Mary died. Rebecca touched his arm briefly, the most personal gesture he'd seen from her. You're protecting him. That's what good parents do. Feels like failure, like I'm not strong enough to keep him safe himself. Rebecca's laugh held no humor. Against what? A billionaire with private security, political connections, and a corporate army? This isn't a fair fight, Jack. It never was. They reached Rebecca's car, an aging Subaru covered in bumper stickers from various political campaigns and social causes. Before opening her door, she turned to him with unexpected intensity. Do you know why I'm risking everything for this story? My career, my safety? Jack shook his head, waiting. 5 years ago, I was a rising star at the Dallas Tribune. Rebecca's eyes fixed on some middle distance. I was investigating tech industry sexual harassment when venture capitalist Adam Williams attacked me in his office. I reported it, had evidence, witnesses. Know what happened? Nothing to him, everything to me. I was fired, blacklisted, called unstable and vindictive. He still sits on boards, judges startup competitions, mentors young women. She refocused on Jack, something fierce burning behind her professional facade. So when I say I understand what we're up against, I mean it. Men like Reed and Williams don't lose. They don't face consequences. The system is designed to protect them. What makes you think this time will be different? Jack asked quietly. Rebecca's smile was sharp as broken glass. Because this time, we have irrefutable evidence. We have multiple witnesses. We have public attention. And most importantly, we have Sophia Reed herself, ready to testify against her husband. If we can't win with all that, then the system is beyond saving. As Jack drove home in his aging pickup, Rebecca's words echoed in his mind. The system is designed to protect them. But systems were created by people, which meant they could be changed by people. Even ordinary ones like him, if enough stood together. His phone rang through the truck's speakers. Carlos. Ethan settled in at my sister's. They've already got him helping make enchiladas for dinner. He misses you, but he's okay. Relief washed through Jack. Thank him for being brave. Tell him I'll call at bedtime. Jack, there's something else. Carlos's voice shifted, tension evident. My wife's cancer treatment center called. Our insurance is suddenly reviewing coverage for her next round of chemo. The administrator mentioned something about policy violations that never existed before. The implication hung heavy between them. Nathan Reed's influence reaching into the most vulnerable aspects of their lives. It's not a coincidence, is it? Carlos finally voiced what they both knew. No, Jack gripped the steering wheel tighter. It's not. The rest of the week unfolded in a blur of legal meetings, media inquiries, and mounting pressure. Jack's former employer at Wilson Electric, where he'd worked before Mary's death, called to rescind a tentative job offer, citing concerns about publicity. His landlord delivered a notice claiming violations of the morality clause in his lease agreement. Credit cards he rarely used were suddenly canceled for security concerns. Each blow came with plausible deniability, but the pattern was unmistakable. Nathan Reed systematically dismantling Jack's ability to earn a living, maintain housing, or access financial services. Meanwhile, public opinion polarized dramatically. Most supported Jack and Sophia, celebrating them as courageous whistleblowers. But a vocal minority, amplified by accounts later traced to a PR firm on Visionary Tech's payroll, painted Jack as an unbalanced fame seeker, Sophia as mentally unstable, and Nathan as the victim of a coordinated smear campaign. On Wednesday evening, Jack returned from another exhausting legal meeting to find his apartment door slightly ajar. Heart pounding, he approached cautiously, phone ready to call 911. Inside, nothing seemed disturbed at first glance. Then he noticed the blinking light on his ancient laptop, a device he rarely used and had left closed on the kitchen table. The screen displayed a video window, security footage from inside Carlos's sister's home in Houston. The camera zoomed in on Ethan sleeping peacefully, then cut to a message. Nowhere is beyond our reach. Last chance. Jack stumbled back, nausea rising in his throat. With shaking hands, he called Detective Martinez, then Christine, then Carlos to warn his family. Within an hour, police secured Carlos's sister's home and began investigating how someone had accessed Jack's laptop and the Houston home's security system. Christine immediately arranged for Ethan and Carlos's relatives to relocate to an undisclosed location with private security. The next morning, Jack sat in Christine's office as she outlined their response to this escalation. This crosses from intimidation into criminal territory. Christine's typical composure had hardened into cold determination. We're filing federal cyberstalking charges and requesting an emergency hearing on the restraining order against Reed. Jack stared out the window at the Visionary Tech tower gleaming in the distance. I want to meet with him. Everyone in the room turned to him in shock. Nathan Reed, Jack continued, a strange calm settling over him. I want to meet him face to face. Absolutely not. Christine's refusal was immediate. That would violate the restraining order we're pursuing, potentially compromise our legal strategy, and put you at physical risk. He's terrorizing my son from a distance. Jack's voice remained steady. I need to look him in the eye. Make him understand this won't work. Rebecca leaned forward. Jack, that's exactly what he wants. To provoke you into a confrontation where he controls the environment in the narrative. Their arguments were logical, professional, correct, and entirely insufficient to counter the primal rage burning through Jack's veins. This man had threatened his child, the one sacred responsibility in his life. Legal strategies and restraining orders suddenly seemed like paper shields against a flamethrower. Jack left the meeting early, ignoring calls from Christine and Rebecca as he drove directly to the visionary tech tower. He had no plan beyond confronting the man responsible for turning his life upside down, for forcing him to send Ethan away, for threatening a 7-year-old boy to gain leverage. The security desk in the soaring lobby initially refused him entry, but when Jack loudly explained that he was the janitor from the video, heads turned throughout the space. Smartphones appeared, recording the confrontation. Unwilling to create a scene that would inevitably reach social media, the security team contacted upper management. To Jack's surprise, word came down to escort him to the executive floor. The elevator rose 62 stories, each floor representing another level of wealth and power he could barely comprehend. The security guards flanked him silently, their earpieces occasionally crackling with updates. Victor Collins met him in a plush waiting area, his tailored suit and practiced smile projecting calm authority. "Mr. Wilson, this is unexpected. I'm afraid Mr. Reed is in meetings all afternoon." Jack remained standing, declining the offered seat. "Tell him I'm here. Tell him it's about the video of my son sleeping in Houston." Something flickered behind Collins's professional mask, perhaps surprise that Jack knew the source of the threat or concern about the escalation it represented. "I'll see if he can spare a few minutes." Collins disappeared through heavy wooden doors, returning moments later. "Mr. Reed can give you 5 minutes. I'll need to remain present, of course." The corner office occupied the building's prime space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Dallas. Nathan Reed stood behind his massive desk, maintaining the power position as Jack entered. His appearance had deteriorated since the press conference, his customary polish diminished by sleepless nights and mounting pressure. But his eyes still burned with the same cold arrogance Jack had witnessed at the gala. Jack didn't wait for pleasantries. "Stay away from my son." His voice emerged lower and steadier than he expected, given the adrenaline coursing through his system. Nathan studied him with clinical detachment. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Why would I have any interest in your child?" "The video on my laptop. The security footage from Houston." Jack stepped closer to the desk, noting how Collins tensed slightly. "We both know it came from you. That's quite an accusation." Nathan's mouth curved into something approximating a smile. "Do you have evidence of these alleged threats, or is this another emotional outburst from the unstable janitor?" Jack reached slowly into his pocket, extracting his phone. "I recorded everything, and I'm recording now." He placed the device on the desk between them, the red record button clearly visible. Nathan's careful composure slipped momentarily, his gaze flicking to the phone, then back to Jack's face. "You think you're clever, don't you? Playing at being a hero, disrupting lives and businesses with your self-righteous crusade. This isn't about being clever or being a hero." Jack maintained steady eye contact. "This is about right and wrong. This is about a woman and her unborn child deserving safety. This is about my son deserving to grow up without fear." Nathan's laugh held no humor. "Right and wrong, in the real world, there's only power, and those too weak to seek it. You stepped into something you don't understand, and now you're facing the consequences." "I understand perfectly." Jack's calmness seemed to irritate Nathan more than anger would have. "You're used to everyone backing down. Your money and position usually shield you from consequences. But not this time." Nathan leaned forward, hands flat on the desk. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I built an empire from nothing. I employ thousands. I advise senators and governors. Who are you, a nobody who cleans up after your betters?" Something shifted in Jack at those words, not toward anger, but toward a clarity that cut through fear and doubt. "You think being a janitor makes me less than you? That honest work somehow diminishes a person's worth or right to speak truth? I think it makes you irrelevant." Nathan's mask slipped further, revealing the contempt beneath. "People like you are interchangeable, replaceable. I can destroy your life with a phone call, while you can't even make fin without my permission." Jack shook his head slowly. "That's where you're wrong. You see, you need people to fear you to maintain control. But once someone stops fearing you, truly stops, your power evaporates." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Nathan's face. Jack continued, his voice gaining strength. You can take my job, my apartment, my credit. You can harass and threaten and intimidate, but you can't take my conscience. You can't make me unsee what you did to your wife, and you can't stop what's already in motion. Is that a threat? Nathan's voice rose slightly. Jack shook his head. Not a threat, a reality. Your money can buy a lot of things. Lawyers, PR firms, politicians, maybe even temporarily a DA's hesitation. But it can't buy the truth. And the truth is, you're a man who beats his pregnant wife, who threatens children, who believes wealth equals worth. That truth will follow you forever now, no matter what happens in court. Nathan's control finally shattered. His face flushed dark red as he jabbed a finger toward Jack. You self-righteous piece of garbage. When I'm finished with you, you'll wish you'd never set foot in Sapphire Hall. Your son will grow up knowing his father as a delusional failure who destroyed their lives for a moment of misguided heroism. Jack remained unmoved by the outburst, calmly picking up his still recording phone. Thank you, Mr. Reed. This has been an illuminating conversation. As Jack turned to leave, Nathan called after him. You think you've won something here? This is just beginning. I will bury you so deep your son won't find you for decades. Jack paused at the door, looking back one final time. No, you won't, because unlike you, I'm not alone in this fight anymore. In the elevator descending from the executive floor, Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Christine. Where are you? Call immediately. He stepped out into the lobby, now significantly more crowded than when he'd arrived. Several people openly filmed him with their phones. Others whispered behind hands, recognition in their eyes. Jack moved through them quietly, heading for the exit in the uncertain path beyond. His phone rang, Rebecca this time. He answered as he pushed through the revolving doors into the bright afternoon sunlight. Are you insane? Rebecca's voice vibrated with barely controlled fury. You just walked into the lion's den with no backup, no legal protection, no strategy. Jack squinted against the sun, feeling strangely lighter despite the confrontation. I got what I needed. And what exactly was that? A chance to compromise our entire case? To give Reed's team ammunition for their claim that you're harassing him? Jack unlocked his truck, sliding into the familiar worn seat. I needed to look him in the eye, to remind myself who we're fighting and why it matters. And I needed him to show his true face. He told Rebecca about the recording, how Nathan had finally dropped his carefully constructed mask of reasonable concern to reveal the rage and contempt beneath. You recorded it? Rebecca's tone shifted from anger to cautious interest. Without his knowledge or consent? Jack started the engine, the old pickup rumbling to life. Texas is a one-party consent state. Christine confirmed that in our first meeting. A beat of silence, then, get that recording to Christine immediately. And Jack, don't ever go rogue like that again. We're a team now, whether you're used to that or not. As Jack pulled into traffic, he caught sight of the visionary tech tower in his rearview mirror. 62 stories of glass and steel reaching toward the clouds, seemingly untouchable in its power and permanence. But nothing was permanent. Nothing was untouchable. Not empires, not billionaires, not systems designed to protect the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. It just took someone willing to stand firm when the easier path was retreat. Jack touched the phone in his pocket, the recording of Nathan's true nature now secured. One more piece of evidence in the growing case against a man who had believed himself beyond accountability. One more step toward justice for Sophia Reed and her unborn child. One more reason Jack Wilson, janitor, father, ordinary man, would not back down, no matter the cost. Morning sunlight filtered through the high windows of the Charleston County Courthouse, illuminating dust motes that danced above the polished oak benches. Outside, the muggy Carolina air pressed against the historic building, but inside, air conditioning maintained a chill that matched the proceedings' gravity. Television satellite trucks lined the street while protesters and supporters formed distinct camps on the courthouse steps, their chants occasionally penetrating the thick walls. Jack sat on a hard wooden bench in the corridor, tugging uncomfortably at the collar of his borrowed suit. Carlos had insisted he wear his Sunday best, slightly too large across the shoulders, slightly too short at the wrists, but the only proper attire Jack owned. 3 months had passed since that confrontation in Nathan Reed's office. 3 months of depositions, motions, counter motions, and legal maneuvering that had finally culminated in this moment. Commonwealth of South Carolina vol. Nathan Reed. The criminal trial was taking place in Charleston rather than Dallas, a significant victory for Christine's legal team. Sophia's family had documented her injuries during visits to their Charleston home, establishing jurisdiction in a state with stronger domestic violence laws and without Nathan's extensive political connections. Christine approached, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. "They're ready for us. Remember what we practiced? Answer exactly what's asked, nothing more. Don't let Sterling provoke an emotional response." Jack nodded, his mouth too dry for words. Through the large wooden doors, he could see the courtroom already filled to capacity. Journalists with notebooks poised, curious locals who'd arrived before dawn to secure seats, and a row of suited figures on the defense side that radiated wealth and influence. Nathan sat among them, imperious in a tailored gray suit, not a hair out of place. On the prosecution side, Sophia perched like a bird ready for flight, her pregnancy now in its final weeks. She'd gained back some of the weight she'd lost in the hospital, and her posture had straightened in the months away from Nathan's control. Her family, old Charleston money with its own kind of power, flanked her protectively. Their involvement had been another crucial factor in bringing Nathan to trial, their connections counterbalancing his. Carlos squeezed Jack's shoulder before taking his seat in the gallery. Rebecca nodded from the press section, her laptop open and ready. She'd been instrumental in keeping public attention focused on the case, preventing Nathan's PR machine from reframing the narrative. "All rise." The bailiff's command brought the room to attention as Judge Eleanor Hartfield entered, her reputation for tough but fair rulings preceding her like an invisible shield. The court is now in session. The case of Commonwealth of South Carolina versus Nathan Reed on charges of assault, domestic battery, and criminal threats. Judge Hartfield's voice carried authority without requiring volume. "Be seated." District Attorney Melissa Washington rose, her dark suit a stark contrast against the prosecution table's polished surface. She had initially recused herself due to a distant connection to Sophia's family, but public pressure had forced her to personally lead the case. Her opening statement painted a methodical picture of Nathan's escalating violence, carefully linking each incident to specific evidence in witness testimony. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Washington concluded, "this case is fundamentally about power and its abuse. Mr. Reed believed his wealth and status placed him above accountability, that his wife was property to be controlled through fear and pain, that witnesses could be silenced through intimidation. Today in this courtroom, you have the power to show him he was wrong." The defense attorney, Gregory Sterling, stood with practiced confidence. His reputation for securing acquittals for wealthy clients made him a formidable opponent, commanding fees that would have paid Jack's rent for decades. Sterling's opening painted Nathan as the real victim of misunderstanding, of an unstable wife with a history of emotional problems, of opportunistic witnesses seeking fame or financial gain. His voice dripped with reasonable doubt, planting seeds of uncertainty about every piece of evidence. When Ms. Montgomery Reed dropped her glass at the charity event, Mr. Reed instinctively reached out to steady her. Sterling demonstrated with a gentle motion. What followed was a misinterpretation by individuals with no medical training and no knowledge of Ms. Montgomery Reed's documented history of balance issues and fainting spells during pregnancy. Jack watched the jury, 4 men, 8 women of various ages and backgrounds, for their reactions. Some frowned skeptically at Sterling's revisionist account, while others maintained neutral expressions, giving nothing away. The prosecution called its first witness, Dr. Elizabeth Chen, the emergency physician who had treated Sophia at Dallas Memorial. Her clinical description of Sophia's injuries, bruised cheekbones, split lip, older contusions in various healing stages, signs of prior fractures, cut through Sterling's careful narrative. Medical records projected onto screens showed x-rays with healed rib fractures, documented injuries spanning 18 months. Sterling's cross-examination attacked Dr. Chen's qualifications to assess the causes of these injuries. Could a fainting spell explain the bruising? Couldn't prior fractures have resulted from Sophia's documented horseback riding accident in college? When Dr. Chen stood firm, Sterling pivoted to undermining her objectivity, implying she'd been influenced by media coverage before examining Sophia. Jack was called next, heart hammering as he took the oath. The witness stand felt exposed, with every eye in the room fixed upon him. Christine had warned him that Sterling would try to provoke an emotional outburst to undermine his credibility. District Attorney Washington established the basic facts: Jack's employment at Sapphire Hall, his observations the night of the gala, his intervention when he saw Sophia fall. Sterling rose for cross-examination, his approach deceptively conversational. Mr. Wilson, you were employed as a janitor at Sapphire Hall, correct? Not as security personnel, not as medical staff? Jack maintained eye contact despite the implied diminishment. Yes, sir, I was responsible for maintenance and cleaning. So you had no professional obligation to intervene in what you claimed to have witnessed? Sterling paced slowly before the witness stand. No professional obligation? No. Sterling nodded thoughtfully. Tell me, Mr. Wilson, had you ever met Sophia Reed before that night? No, sir. Or Nathan Reed? No, sir. So you had no personal knowledge of their relationship dynamics, their private interactions, or any medical conditions Ms. Reed might have had? Jack felt the trap being laid, but answered truthfully. No, I didn't. Sterling's expression turned sympathetic, as if Jack were a misguided child. Yet despite your complete lack of context or relevant expertise, you felt qualified to insert yourself into a situation between a husband and his pregnant wife, a situation you had observed for mere seconds from across a crowded room. Christine had prepared Jack for exactly this line of attack. I observed Mr. Reed strike his wife with enough force to knock her to the floor. She was bleeding and protecting her pregnant belly. In that moment, the only qualification needed was being human. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Sterling's expression hardened momentarily before he recovered. Mr. Wilson, isn't it true that you experienced a personal tragedy when your wife died 3 years ago? Sterling's pivot was calculated to destabilize. Jack's chest tightened at the unexpected mention of Mary. Yes, and you've been struggling financially since then, taking a significant step down from your previous career as an electrician to work as a janitor? The insinuation hung in the air that Jack was motivated by potential financial gain, perhaps seeing Nathan as a wealthy target. Christine had prepared him for this too. I took the job at Sapphire Hall because the night hours allowed me to care for my son during the day. Jack kept his voice steady. My financial situation had nothing to do with my decision to intervene when I saw a woman being assaulted. Sterling pressed harder, questioning Jack's convenient timing, the suspicious disappearance of his original video, and his subsequent media exposure. He implied collusion with Rebecca, suggested Jack harbored resentment towards successful people, and questioned his mental stability following his wife's death. Mr. Wilson, isn't it possible that, still grieving your wife and struggling with your reduced circumstances, you mistakenly projected your personal trauma onto an innocent interaction between the Reeds? The courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. Jack studied Sterling's perfectly composed face, recognizing the same quality Nathan possessed, the absolute certainty that wealth and power would shield them from consequences. What I saw wasn't a projection or misinterpretation. Jack spoke directly to the jury now. I saw exactly what the security footage later confirmed. Mr. Reed striking his pregnant wife with enough force to knock her down, causing visible injury. I intervened not because of my past or my job title, but because, in that moment, staying silent wasn't an option I could live with. Sterling abandoned that line of questioning, pivoting to attack Jack's reliability by highlighting the threatening confrontation at Visionary Tech headquarters. By the time Jack stepped down, he felt wrung out, uncertain whether his testimony had helped or hurt Sophia's case. Carlos testified next about the workplace culture at Sapphire Hall that discouraged staff from intervening in guest behavior, followed by Linda describing Sophia's condition at the hospital. Each faced Sterling's methodical attempts to undermine their credibility or twist their observations. The day's final witness brought a visible reaction from Nathan for the first time. Eleanor Reed, 70 years old and walking with a slight limp, entered the courtroom through a side door. Nathan straightened in his chair, color draining from his face as his mother was sworn in. Mrs. Reed, could you please tell the court about your marriage to Harold Reed, Nathan's father? Washington's question was gentle but direct. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained clear. Harold had a temper. When Nathan was young, Harold would get angry, about business problems, about dinner being late, about anything really. He would hit me, sometimes worse. Washington produced police reports and hospital records dating back to Nathan's childhood. And these documented incidents, Mrs. Reed, did Nathan witness them? Most of them. Eleanor's gaze moved to her son for the first time. He would hide in his closet during the worst episodes. I found him there many times, covering his ears. The courtroom sat in uncomfortable silence as Eleanor described the cycle of violence that had shaped Nathan's childhood. Harold's explosive rage, his tearful apologies, the gradual isolation from family and friends, the economic control that prevented her escape. "Did you ever seek help, Mrs. Reed?" Washington asked. "Once," Eleanor's voice wavered. "When Nathan was 12, I packed our bags while Harold was at work. We made it to my sister's house in Virginia. 3 days later, Harold found us. He broke my arm in 3 places and told Nathan this was what happened to women who didn't know their place." Nathan stared at the table, knuckles white where he gripped the edge. "Why are you testifying today, Mrs. Reed?" Washington's final question hung in the air. Eleanor looked directly at her son, tears now flowing freely. "Because I see Harold in him now, because I failed to break the cycle, because Sophia and her baby deserve what I never had, a chance to be free." Sterling declined to cross-examine Eleanor Reed. By the trial's 5th day, the prosecution had presented a devastating case. Security footage from the Reed mansion showing multiple assaults, medical records documenting Sophia's injuries, testimony from household staff who had witnessed Nathan's controlling behavior, and financial records showing how he had systematically isolated Sophia by restricting her access to money. The recording from Jack's confrontation in Nathan's office proved particularly damaging, capturing his unguarded threats and admission that power, not truth, was his primary concern. Sterling fought desperately to have it excluded as an illegal recording, but Judge Hartfield ruled it admissible under South Carolina's one-party consent laws. The defense strategy shifted to presenting Nathan as a victim of his upbringing who needed treatment, not punishment, a man who'd never learned healthy relationship skills due to his father's influence. They brought forward business associates who testified to Nathan's professional brilliance and philanthropy, suggesting his private struggles shouldn't negate his public contributions. On the trial's 6th day, Sophia took the stand. Her testimony represented the greatest risk and potentially greatest impact for the prosecution. Sterling would attack her mercilessly, seeking inconsistencies or emotional reactions he could use to undermine her credibility. Sophia wore a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back, her advanced pregnancy impossible to ignore. She spoke clearly about the gradual escalation of Nathan's control and violence, how it began with checking her phone and criticizing her clothes, progressed to isolating her from friends and family, and eventually became physical abuse that worsened after she became pregnant. "I thought having a baby would make him gentler, make him want to protect us both." Sophia's hand rested on her belly. Instead, he seemed to resent the baby. He'd say things like, "You think this gives you power over me, and don't think this means I can't replace you." Washington guided her methodically through each documented incident, building a timeline of escalating abuse. When they reached the night of the gala, Sophia described making a deliberate choice. "I knew there would be witnesses, cameras. I spilled my drink on his suit on purpose, hoping someone would notice his reaction. I was terrified, but more terrified of bringing my child home to that house." Sterling's cross-examination was exactly as brutal as expected. He questioned Sophia's mental health history, suggesting she suffered from delusions and paranoia. He highlighted text messages where she'd told friends her marriage was wonderful, and Nathan was so supportive, portraying her as a liar rather than a trapped woman maintaining appearances. Most cunningly, he introduced Sophia's prenuptial agreement, which would leave her with a modest settlement in a divorce unless Nathan was convicted of a felony, in which case a special clause would grant her nearly half his assets. "So it's merely coincidental, Ms. Montgomery Reed, that your accusations would result in an approximately $1 billion difference in your divorce settlement?" Sterling's implication hung in the courtroom like poison gas. Sophia's composure cracked for the first time. "You think I manufactured years of documented injuries and risked my life and my baby's life for money?" Sterling pressed harder. I think it's an awfully convenient motivation that the jury should consider when weighing your credibility. Washington objected, and Judge Hartfield sustained, but the insinuation had been planted. Sophia gripped the witness stand, her knuckles white. Mr. Sterling, I grew up with more money than I could spend. My family has been in Charleston for 6 generations. I chose Nathan because I loved him, and I stayed because I was afraid of him. If I had wanted to leave with money, I would have gone home to my parents at the first sign of trouble. Her voice strengthened as she continued. The money means nothing. I would live in a one-room apartment and work 3 jobs if it meant my daughter would never see her father hurt her mother. I would give up every penny to never again feel his hands around my throat. The gallery sat in stunned silence. Even Sterling momentarily faltered before regrouping to attack perceived inconsistencies in Sophia's previous statements. When Sophia finally stepped down, exhaustion evident in every movement, Jack caught her eye from the gallery and nodded slightly. She returned the gesture, a silent acknowledgement between two people forever connected by one pivotal moment of decision. Nathan Reed was the defense's final witness. Sterling had clearly coached him extensively. Gone was the arrogant CEO, replaced by a contrite figure who spoke softly about his difficult childhood and struggles with anger management. He admitted to regrettable incidents while denying the most serious allegations. He expressed remorse for failing to get help sooner and pledged to undergo extensive therapy. Washington's cross-examination systematically dismantled this carefully constructed persona. She contrasted Nathan's courtroom demeanor with his recorded threats to Jack, his attempts to have Sophia committed against her will, and the intimidation campaign against witnesses. Most devastatingly, she played the security footage from the Reed mansion showing Nathan's violence side by side with his sworn deposition denying those same incidents. Mr. Reed, how do you explain directly contradicting under oath what we can all see with our own eyes? Washington's question hung in the courtroom. Nathan's carefully maintained facade began to crack. Those videos are selectively edited to remove context. Sophia had issues with balance. She would become hysterical, and I would need to restrain her for her own safety. Washington approached the witness stand, maintaining uncomfortable proximity. So in the footage where you strike Ms. Reed across the face with enough force to knock her down, you were helping her with her balance issues? The question triggered something in Nathan. His expression darkened, jaw tightening visibly. You don't understand the pressure I was under, running a billion-dollar company while dealing with her constant emotional problems. Sometimes she needed to be controlled for her own good. The slip, revealing his true perspective, that violence was justified as control, sent a ripple through the courtroom. Washington pressed the advantage. For her own good? Like when you kicked her in the stomach while she was pregnant? Like when you fractured her ribs? Like when you threatened to kill her if she left you? Nathan's composure disintegrated entirely. She's manipulating all of you. His voice rose sharply. You think she's some innocent victim? She trapped me with this pregnancy. She and her family have been planning this takedown from the beginning. Judge Hartfield rapped her gavel sharply. Mr. Reed, control yourself or I'll have you removed. But Nathan was beyond control, years of carefully concealed rage finally breaking through. You have no idea what it takes to build something like I've built, to maintain it. The sacrifices, the constant threats from all sides. He jabbed a finger towards Sophia. She was supposed to support me, not undermine me. She belongs to me. The courtroom froze in collective shock. Sterling closed his eyes in defeat. Washington simply stepped back, allowing Nathan's true nature to speak for itself. Bailiff, remove the witness and escort him to a holding room until he can compose himself. Judge Hartfield's command broke the stunned silence. The jury will disregard the outburst. But as Nathan was led away, still shouting about conspiracies against him, it was clear no instruction could erase what the jury had witnessed. The mask completely dropped, revealing the man Jack had glimpsed that night at Sapphire Hall. The jury deliberated for just under 5 hours. Jack spent the time pacing the courthouse corridors, too anxious to sit, too invested to leave. Carlos brought him coffee that grew cold in his hands. Rebecca worked furiously on her laptop, preparing alternative articles for either verdict. When the bailiff announced the jury's return, the courtroom filled with electric tension. Nathan had been composed upon his return, but his eyes held a coldness that suggested he'd abandoned the contrite act as no longer useful. On the charge of assault in the first degree, how do you find? Judge Hartfield addressed the jury. Foreperson, we find the defendant guilty. The words seemed to physically strike Nathan, his body stiffening as if bracing against the blow. On the charge of domestic battery, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of criminal threats, how do you find? Guilty. On all remaining counts? Guilty, Your Honor. A collective exhale rippled through the prosecution side of the courtroom. Sophia closed her eyes, tears streaming silently down her face. Her mother wrapped an arm around her shoulders, whispering into her ear. Jack felt an overwhelming wave of emotion, not triumph or satisfaction, but something closer to relief. The system, so often weighted in favor of wealth and power, had functioned as intended. Truth, painstakingly documented and presented, had prevailed over influence and intimidation. Judge Hartfield scheduled sentencing for the following week, remanding Nathan to custody despite his attorney's strenuous objections. As officers approached with handcuffs, Nathan's gaze locked on Jack, burning with undimmed hatred. Jack met his eyes steadily, neither gloating nor flinching. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the prosecution team and witnesses. Christine in Washington handled most questions, emphasizing that the verdict represented the system working as it should. Jack hung back, uncomfortable with the attention, but unwilling to abandon Sophia until she was safely away from the chaos. The events of the past 3 months had forged connections between unlikely allies: a janitor, a chef, a nurse, a journalist, and a woman born to privilege who had discovered its limits in the face of abuse. They had risked careers, safety, and stability to stand together against someone who believed his wealth made him untouchable. 1 week later, Jack returned to Charleston for the sentencing hearing. The courtroom was slightly less crowded, the media frenzy having partially subsided after the verdict. Nathan appeared diminished in county-issued clothing, the bespoke suits and careful grooming replaced by standard-issue simplicity. Judge Hartfield delivered a sentence that acknowledged both the severity of Nathan's crimes and his childhood trauma. 8 years in federal prison with mandatory psychiatric treatment, a permanent restraining order protecting Sophia and her child, and substantial financial restitution. Most significantly, she ordered that 60% of the marital assets be granted to Sophia, with Nathan retaining 40% to be managed by a court-appointed trustee during his incarceration. This court cannot undo the harm you have inflicted, Mr. Reed. Judge Hartfield's voice carried throughout the silent courtroom. But it can ensure that your wife and child have the resources to heal and rebuild without fear, while you receive the intervention you should have had decades ago. As Nathan was led away, Jack noticed something unexpected. Eleanor Reed, sitting quietly in the back row, watching her son with an expression of sorrow rather than condemnation. Their eyes met briefly, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They had both, in different ways, stood up to break a generational cycle of violence, with all the pain such ruptures entailed. After the hearing, Sophia asked to speak with Jack privately. They found a quiet corner in the courthouse garden, autumn sunlight warming the ancient bricks around them. I never properly thanked you. Sophia's voice was stronger than when they'd first met, her posture no longer defensive, not just for that night, but for everything that followed. Standing firm when so many would have retreated, Jack shook his head slightly. I only did what anyone should have done. You're the one who showed real courage. Leaving, testifying, rebuilding. Sophia smiled, the expression transforming her face in ways that hinted at who she might have been without years of fear. Maybe courage is contagious. She rested a hand on her belly, now full term. I've been thinking about what happens next. The foundation I want to build with part of the settlement. A place that helps people escape situations like mine, that provides legal support, housing, job training. It sounds important, much needed. Jack sensed there was more to this conversation than gratitude or future plans. Sophia confirmed his instinct. I want you to be part of it, Jack. Not as a janitor, but using your actual skills. You're an electrician by training, right? We'll need someone to oversee the physical facilities, security systems, building operations. someone who understands both the practical needs and the deeper purpose. The offer caught Jack off guard. His life in Dallas seemed impossibly distant now, the apartment he'd vacated after repeated vandalism, the jobs that had evaporated, the community that had fractured under pressure. Only Ethan remained constant, currently staying with Jack's cousin in Austin until the trial concluded. I don't know anything about nonprofits or foundations. Jack's instinctive caution emerged. I'm just a working guy who happened to be in the right place at the wrong time. Sophia's expression grew serious. That's exactly why I'm asking you. Not because you have foundation experience, but because you understand what it means to see something wrong and act, regardless of the cost. That perspective is rarer and more valuable than any technical skill. Jack considered the unexpected crossroads before him. Return to Dallas and attempt to rebuild his former life, or accept this opportunity to be part of something that might help others avoid what Sophia had endured. I need to think about it. Talk to my son. He's had his life turned upside down enough already. Sophia nodded, understanding. Of course. But Jack, sometimes the hardest journeys lead to places we never imagined we could go. Sometimes standing up, even when it costs everything, gives back more than we lost. The words stayed with Jack as he flew back to Austin that evening, mulling over possibilities that hadn't existed 3 months earlier. Ethan greeted him with fierce enthusiasm at his cousin's modest home, full of stories about his temporary school and the friends he'd made. Later that night, as Jack tucked his son into the guest room bed, Ethan asked the question he'd clearly been saving. Does this mean the bad man can't hurt anyone anymore? Jack chose his words carefully, never wanting to lie to his son, but aware of the complexities beyond a 7-year-old's understanding. It means he's going somewhere he can't hurt his wife or baby, and he's going to get help for his anger problems. Ethan considered this solemnly. Like a timeout, but for grown-ups? Something like that. A very long timeout with doctors to help him learn better ways to handle being upset. Ethan nodded, satisfied with this framework. Dad, are we going home now? The question hung between them. Home, no longer a clear reference point. Their apartment had been surrendered, their possessions mostly in storage, their former neighborhood tainted by unpleasant memories of threats and vandalism. What would you think about a new home? Jack watched his son's face carefully. Maybe not in Dallas, somewhere with better schools, closer to the ocean. Ethan's eyes widened. Like where that nice lady lives, the one you helped? Charleston, Jack confirmed. There might be a job opportunity there. We'd have to start over. New school for you, new place for us. It's a big change. Ethan was quiet for a moment, processing this potential future with the seriousness children sometimes bring to major life decisions. Would you still be fixing things? That's what you're best at. Jack smiled at his son's perfect distillation of identity beyond job titles. Yeah, buddy, I'd still be fixing things. Just different things, and maybe for people who really need help. Ethan nodded decisively. I think we should go. His small hand reached out to touch the fading bruise on Jack's cheekbone, a parting gift from one of Nathan's more zealous supporters outside the courthouse. Maybe there you won't have to fight bad guys anymore. The comment struck Jack with unexpected force. The realization that despite his efforts to shield Ethan, his son had absorbed the fear and tension of recent months. The chance to start fresh somewhere without those associations suddenly held greater appeal. The following week brought resolution to the logistical details of Jack's decision. Christine negotiated a modest settlement with Sapphire Hall for wrongful termination, providing enough financial cushion for the move to Charleston. Rebecca's series on the case won National Journalism Awards, focusing renewed attention on how wealth and influence often insulated perpetrators of domestic violence. Carlos received funding to develop a culinary training program for domestic violence survivors, part of Sophia's larger foundation vision. 2 months after Nathan Reed's sentencing, Jack and Ethan arrived in Charleston to begin their new chapter. The city's historic architecture and coastal atmosphere couldn't have been more different from Dallas's modern sprawl. They settled into a small but comfortable apartment near the foundation offices, which were being established in a formerly abandoned community center in need of extensive renovation. On the day Jack first walked through the building that would become the new Dawn Center, Sophia accompanied him, now with 2-week-old Emma cradled against her chest. The infant's tiny features held hints of her mother, but mercifully little resemblance to Nathan. Sophia's family had rallied around her, providing both emotional support and practical assistance as she navigated new motherhood alongside launching the foundation. The building needed everything: updated wiring, plumbing, security systems, structural repairs, all areas where Jack's practical skills would prove invaluable. As they toured the space, he found himself envisioning possibilities. A commercial kitchen where Carlos could teach culinary skills, comfortable counseling rooms, a children's play area, secure residential apartments for emergency housing. "So what do you think?" Sophia asked as they stood in what would become the main reception area. "Can you transform this place?" Jack ran a hand along a wall, noting where the plaster had crumbled to reveal the solid bones beneath. "It's got good structure, strong foundation. The rest is just details." Sophia smiled at the metaphor's aptness. "That's what I thought too." Her gaze dropped to Emma's sleeping face. Sometimes the strongest things are built from what was broken. Over the following months, Jack immersed himself in the renovation project, finding unexpected satisfaction in applying his skills to a purpose larger than a paycheck. Ethan thrived in his new school, quickly making friends and joining the science club. The lingering anxiety that had shadowed him in Dallas gradually receded, replaced by the resilience children often demonstrate when given stability and safety. The foundation work attracted others who understood its mission from personal experience. Linda relocated from Dallas to establish the center's health services component. Rebecca divided her time between journalism projects and developing the foundation's media strategy. Carlos visited regularly, developing the culinary program while his wife continued cancer treatments in Dallas, now fully covered after Christine threatened the insurance company with a very public legal battle. 6 months after the trial, the New Dawn Center prepared for its grand opening. What had once been a neglected building stood transformed, warm, welcoming, and secure. The residential wing could house up to 12 families in emergency situations. The education center offered job training, financial literacy, and legal advocacy. The children's area provided therapeutic play spaces and counseling. The night before the official opening, Jack worked late, addressing last-minute details. In the main hall, now painted in calming blues and greens, Sophia sat reviewing donor information while Emma slept in a portable crib nearby. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Sophia's question broke the comfortable silence. "That night at Sapphire Hall, did you have any idea where that one moment would lead?" Jack paused in his adjustment of a security camera. "Never in a million years. I just knew I couldn't walk away and still face myself in the mirror. Or face Ethan." Sophia nodded, understanding. "That's what I tell people when they ask why you did it, that some people simply can't turn away, even when it would be easier. Even when it cost them everything." Jack thought about the kids, the job lost, the apartment abandoned, the threats endured, and weighed them against the gains. Ethan's increased confidence, the purpose he'd found in this work, the community they'd built among survivors and advocates. "I didn't lose everything." Jack's perspective had shifted over months of reflection. "I lost things I could replace: the bum, an apartment, some fair-weather friends. But I kept what mattered: my self-respect, my son's respect. And I gained things I never expected." Their conversation was interrupted by Carlos arriving with dinner for the late workers, his contribution to the final preparations. The three of them sat together sharing the meal, discussing the next day's ceremony and the foundation's future plans. The easy camaraderie between them reflected bonds forged through shared purpose and challenge. The official opening the following day brought together an unlikely coalition: domestic violence survivors, law enforcement officials, community leaders, and major donors, including several former Visionary Tech board members who distanced themselves from Nathan after the trial. Sophia delivered a moving speech about transformation and new beginnings. Her confidence visibly increased from the frightened woman Jack had first encountered. When it was Jack's turn to speak, he found himself uncharacteristically nervous. Public speaking had never been his strength. He was a doer, not a talker. But as he looked out at the gathered crowd, he recognized the importance of adding his voice to the narrative. 3 years ago, I was just trying to keep my head above water." Jack's words emerged slowly at first, gaining strength as he continued. "Working nights, raising my son alone, getting through each day. The night I saw Nathan Reed hit his wife, I wasn't looking to get involved in something bigger than myself. I just couldn't look away from someone who needed help. He glanced at Ethan, sitting proudly in the front row. What I learned through everything that followed is that courage isn't some special quality that only heroes possess. It's a choice available to any of us at any moment. Sometimes it's a big moment, like standing up to a powerful person doing wrong. But more often, it's the small daily choices to speak truth, to extend help, to believe survivors, to teach our children the difference between right and wrong. Jack gestured to the building around them. This center exists because many people made those choices over and over when it would have been easier to look away. The staff here, the volunteers, the donors, all choosing to see pain that others ignore and do something about it. His gaze found Sophia and Emma in the audience. Most importantly, this place exists because one woman found the courage to break free, to speak her truth despite every threat and obstacle. Her bravery made all of this possible. As Jack concluded his remarks, he noticed Eleanor Reed standing quietly at the back of the room. Their eyes met briefly, acknowledgement between two people who had chosen difficult paths to break cycles of harm. She nodded once, then slipped away before anyone else noticed her presence. The reception following the ceremony buzzed with conversations and connections forming between survivors, advocates, and supporters. Jack found a quiet moment to step outside, needing a break from the crowd. The Charleston evening wrapped around him, warm and humid, carrying the scent of jasmine and distant salt water. Carlos joined him, offering a cold drink. Not bad for a couple of guys who used to clean up after rich people's parties. Jack smiled at the understatement. Not bad at all. What happens now? Carlos leaned against the railing beside him. Jack considered the question, its scope extending beyond the next day's operations or next month's programs. Now we keep going, keep building, keep helping people find their way out of impossible situations. They stood in companionable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in improbable colors. Jack thought about the journey that had brought him here, from the moment of decision at Sapphire Hall to this new beginning in Charleston. The path had been neither straight nor easy, marked by loss and fear alongside unexpected connection and purpose. Ethan burst through the door, excitement radiating from him. "Dad, Mrs. Reed says I can help give tours tomorrow when the first families arrive." Jack pulled his son close, struck by how much he'd grown in the past months. Not just physically, but in confidence and understanding. "See you inside in a minute, okay?" After Ethan returned to the reception, Carlos voiced what they were both thinking. The kids are the reason, aren't they? Why we couldn't look away that night. Why we kept going when it got rough. Jack nodded, the truth of it settling in his chest. They're watching us, learning what it means to be a man, to be human, by what we do when tested. Carlos clasped his shoulder before heading back inside. For what it's worth, I think they're learning the right lessons. Left alone, Jack allowed himself a moment to acknowledge the complex mixture of emotions the day brought. Pride in what they'd built, lingering anger at the system that made such places necessary, hope for those who would find safety within these walls, and gratitude for the unexpected community that had formed from shared purpose. The door opened again, this time revealing Sophia with Emma bundled against her chest. Hiding from your admirers? Her smile held a warmth that continued to emerge as months of safety accumulated behind her. Just catching my breath. Jack made room for her at the railing. Congratulations. This place is going to help a lot of people. Sophia looked back at the building, its windows now glowing with golden light against the deepening twilight. You know what I realized today? When Nathan was sentenced, I thought that was the end of the story, the period at the end of a terrible chapter. But it wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning. Jack understood exactly what she meant. The trial had been necessary but insufficient, a reckoning, but not a resolution. The true healing for all of them lay in what they built from the wreckage. Somewhere in a federal prison, Nathan Reed continued to maintain his innocence to anyone who would listen. His empire diminished, but not destroyed, his fundamental character likely unchanged. But his power to harm Sophia, to intimidate witnesses, to buy protection from consequences, had been definitively broken. Some people viewed their story as a cautionary tale of how wealth could corrupt, or how privilege could blind, or how justice sometimes required extraordinary persistence. But standing beside Sophia as evening settled around them, Jack saw it differently, as proof that ordinary people, choosing courage over comfort in critical moments, could change the seemingly unchangeable. Emma stirred against her mother's chest, tiny fists waving in momentary distress before settling again. Sophia adjusted the blanket around her with practiced ease, her movements no longer bearing the hypervigilance of someone expecting punishment or at any moment. She's going to grow up in a different world than the one she was conceived in. Sophia's voice held wonder tinged with lingering sadness. She'll never know what it was like, living with that fear. Never see her mother treated as property. The night at Sapphire Hall seemed simultaneously recent and distant, a fulcrum point around which both their lives had pivoted into unexpected trajectories. What had begun as a simple moral choice for Jack had evolved into something far more complex and meaningful, a community dedicated to breaking cycles of violence, to creating pathways toward healing. As they turned to rejoin the celebration inside, Sophia paused, her expression thoughtful. You know what someone asked me earlier? How did you find the strength to leave? And I realized the answer was watching someone else be brave first. Seeing you stand up that night when no one else would, it showed me another way was possible. Jack had never viewed his actions in that light, as permission for others to find their own courage. The realization humbled him, underscoring how small choices could ripple outward in ways no one could fully anticipate. Inside, Ethan was enthusiastically describing the building's security features to an elderly donor, his inherited technical mind evident in his detailed explanation. Carlos's wife, Maya, now in remission, chatted with Linda about volunteer opportunities during her recovery. Rebecca documented the evening for both journalistic purposes and the Foundation's records, her camera capturing moments of connection and celebration. This unlikely family had formed from shared purpose and mutual support, transcending differences in background, education, and circumstance. They had discovered through trial and sacrifice that courage was indeed contagious, that one person standing firm could inspire others to find their own strength. As the evening wound down, Jack found himself standing in what would become the children's playroom, already stocked with books, toys, and comfortable furniture. A mural covered one wall, a sunrise over mountains, painted in hopeful colors. Beneath it, a simple phrase in elegant script. Every ending is also a beginning. He traced the words with his fingertips, feeling their truth resonate through his journey from that night at Sapphire Hall to this moment of new possibility. Whatever came next, challenges, setbacks, triumphs, growth, they would face it together. This community forged in the crucible of standing up when standing up was hard. And in that knowledge lay a different kind of wealth than Nathan Reed had ever possessed or understood. The invaluable fortune of purpose, connection, and the quiet certainty of having chosen right over easy when it mattered most.